Welcome home to St. Anne's. We want you to know that you're welcome to join us at 10 a.m. on Sundays. Please be sure to hit subscribe to receive our sermons. We can't wait to meet you.
In today's gospel reading from John, Jesus makes his third appearance after being raised from the dead. The first appearance had been shortly after the resurrection. The disciples had locked themselves in a house, hiding from the authorities. Their leader had just been arrested, tried, and executed. They trembled with fear that they were going to be next. Then suddenly, Jesus came and stood among them, revealing his resurrected body. The second appearance occurred a week later when so-called doubting Thomas joined the other disciples in the house. Jesus again appeared, inviting Thomas to put his finger on Jesus' pierced hands and side. In the third appearance, which we have in our account today, Jesus performs a miracle at the Sea of Galilee. As many of you know, I went to Israel last November, and many of you have been there as well. It was at the Sea of Galilee that I experienced the high point of my trip. And I know that was the case for some of you also. The Sea of Galilee is actually a large lake, so it also goes by the name Lake Tiberias. All around the lake are the many towns where Jesus carried out his ministry. Cana, where he performed his first miracle of turning water into wine. Capernaum and Bethsaida, towns that are repeatedly mentioned in the Gospels. When I was at the lake, I joined my group for a boat ride. It was an incredible feeling to know that this is where Jesus walked on water. These are the towns where Jesus carried out his ministry. And somewhere along the shore, Jesus also cooked breakfast for his disciples. Let's return to today's gospel story. The disciples have gone fishing, but are having no luck catching any fish. Jesus appears and suggests casting the net on the other side of the boat. When they do, they haul in a net full of fish, 153 to be exact. I don't know who counted, but we have an exact count. The disciples go on shore, and they find Jesus in front of a charcoal fire cooking breakfast for them. For me, this is a rather odd scene. In stark contrast to the great drama of the first two appearances, in which Jesus enters a locked house, reveals his resurrected body, here we have Jesus cooking. It seems so mundane, so menial. Jesus, Lord and Savior, King of Kings, he has just conquered death and risen from the dead. And one of the first things he does is cook breakfast. As strange as this scene may be, it has deep theological significance. At one level, it is a simple meal of bread and fish that Jesus shares with his disciples, an intimate act expressing their bonds of affection and friendship, a time to sit back and enjoy one another's company. The meal shows the human side of Jesus. But the meal also embodies a deeper meaning. The last time that Jesus had shared a meal with his disciples was before his crucifixion, the Last Supper. Now, after the resurrection, he has his first meal with his disciples, what we might call the first breakfast. In the Last Supper, he offers the bread and wine. And here at breakfast, he offers the bread, but fish instead of the wine. Probably not a good idea to drink wine this early in the morning. In spite of the difference in elements, what is common to both meals is that Jesus is the host. As the disciples receive what Jesus offers them, they experience his presence and love. What we have here with the first breakfast, like the Last Supper, is a Eucharistic event. For over 2,000 years, we Christians have followed the example of the disciples at the Last Supper and the first breakfast. In the Eucharist, we too accept Jesus' invitation to join him at his table and to experience his presence. And there's more. The breakfast that Jesus cooks for his disciples has yet another layer of meaning. The first breakfast also points to what will come in the distant future, the heavenly banquet. One of the most interesting images of heaven in the Bible is that of a feast or banquet. Both the Old and New Testaments are filled with references to life after death as a banquet, where we will eat and drink. Many people think of heaven as a hazy, quiet place filled with spirits floating around. But if we turn to the Bible, heaven is going to be a banquet, a feast, a party. Why? Because we will be unable to contain the joy of seeing God face to face and think of all the happy reunions with loved ones. How can we not rejoice and celebrate? The early Christians liked the idea of the heavenly banquet so much that if you go to the catacombs of Rome, these underground tombs, there are bright, vibrant images of the heavenly banquet painted on the walls of the early Christian tombs. We, as the heirs of these early Christians, can also find hope beyond the grave when we will feast at the heavenly banquet. But in the meantime, we have a foretaste of the heavenly banquet in the Eucharist. Each time we eat the bread and drink the wine that Christ offers us, we experience his presence and unite with him in his death and resurrection. But the foretaste, the preview of what's to come, is not limited to these four walls of the church. Eucharistic events occur all around us. Whenever we Christians gather and share food and drink in Christ's name, we are creating Eucharistic events, what theologians and church leaders today call table fellowship. As we share food and drink together, Jesus comes into our midst and blesses us with his presence and love. When I first came to St. Anne 6 months ago, I was a stranger. One of you even joked that he might be the bishop's spy. But from the very beginning, you have kindly opened up to me not only your hearts, but your homes. Some of the most memorable experiences at St. Anne's will be the meals that we have shared. I have a very close friend who has been a member, a very faithful and active member of a parish in our diocese for about 20 years. And I was shocked when she told me that in all her years at this church, not once had she been invited to another member's home for a meal. Sadly, I suspect that this is not that unusual for Episcopal churches. We have some of the nicest people in the world, but we also tend to be reserved and keep a certain polite distance between each other. St. Anne's, on the other hand, is different on this point, as in so many other ways, and I won't get into the liturgy here, but one of your greatest blessings, in fact, what makes you so special, is your warm and open hospitality. So thank you for opening up your hearts and your homes to me. Thank you for inviting me to your table fellowship. Thank you for giving me a foretaste of the heavenly banquet.
I don't even know what to say, but we want you to know that you're welcome to join us at 10 a.m. on Sundays. Please be sure to hit subscribe to receive our sermons. We believe in one God. We can't wait to meet you. The Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of all that is seen and